I don't know what Anita's lawyer whispered in the ear of Susan Horshner. I'm only 5'6" and I'm sitting in a chair, but I got it on top of a 4-foot box. I can edit this tape. You saw it on TV and it didn't make any sense. You were left with the impression that maybe Clarence Thomas had the habit of harassing women on the job, his subordinates, making suggestive remarks. You just didn't know. You couldn't tell. From looking at the circus on TV, you could not draw any conclusions. You couldn't tell one way or the other. I could call this video the face of evil, but instead I'm going to call it zero, because the credibility of the accusers of Clarence Thomas turns out to be zero. You need to understand, first of all, who Susan Horshner is. She was to be Anita Hill's key supporting witness, the person who could corroborate, substantiate Anita Hill's accusation. She was actually the source of the accusation. Unwittingly at first, but then wittingly. Because the two women knew each other in the summer of 1981, while they both lived in Washington, D.C. The two held telephone conversations occasionally, and occasionally the conversation turned to Anita's troubles at work. Her confidence in herself was demolished, and she was thinking of changing jobs. But 10 years later, when Horshner saw on TV that Clarence Thomas was nominated to serve on the Supreme Court, Horshner contacted her casual acquaintance that she had met 10 years before, with whom she had conversed 10 years before. With those conversations in mind about Anita Hill's job troubles, she asked Anita Hill, "Are you going to do anything?" The problem with Susan Horshner's testimony was that it's based on conversations they had on the telephone back in the summer of 1981. And the problem is this: in the summer of 1981, Anita Hill had not yet even met Clarence Thomas. Her job difficulties, the reason for her depression or discouragement and loss of confidence, had nothing to do with Clarence Thomas, because she was working for the law firm, Wald, Harkrader, and Ross. And I'd like to read one sentence out of a book entitled The Real Anita Hill by David Brock. And I'm very impressed with David Brock. When a former supervisor of Hill at the law firm where she worked in 1981 filed a sworn affidavit that directly contradicted her testimony about the circumstances of her departure from the firm, the Democrats quashed a Republican request to subpoena the firm's records. The law firm, Wald, Harkrader, and Ross, was not pleased with Anita's performance. The law firm merely advised her to seek employment elsewhere and advised her that they would help her find employment elsewhere. This was the reason for her discouragement. She either implied to her friend Horshner, Susan Horshner, that there was some kind of discrimination going on, whether it be sexual or racial. Problem with the testimony in the hearings held in the Senate Judiciary Committee where Clarence Thomas was publicly accused of being a sexual harasser. The problem there is that whatever was said on the phone and whatever was misinterpreted on the phone by Susan Horschner, it pertained to events taking place while Anita Hill was working for the law firm Wald, Harkrader and Ross, the law firm which helped her find another job, and lo and behold, it helped her find a job in the Department of Education, where she began working under the supervision of Clarence Thomas for the first time. By the time Anita Hill was working for Clarence Thomas, she had lost contact with Susan Horschner. When Susan Horschner appeared to provide testimony in the Senate Judiciary Committee investigating Clarence Thomas in 1991, she didn't realize the conflict in her story, that the conversations took place prior to Anita Hill working for Clarence Thomas, and they had to pertain to her employment at the law firm Wald Harkrader. Here's where the second element of the story appears. Present in these interviews held by Senate staffers was Anita Hill's lawyer, a woman who is well known today, but not known back then. Present in these interviews where it became obvious that Susan Horschner's testimony was irrelevant at best because it pertained to information conversations that happened prior to Anita's employment with Clarence Thomas. It was just simply irrelevant because of a misunderstanding. Horschner assumed years later that Anita was talking about Clarence Thomas. At this point, Anita Hill's lawyer, present in these interviews when it became apparent that they had absolutely no case whatsoever, advised Horschner to feign a lapse of memory. In other words, she advised Horschner to lie, because although Horschner's memory was fuzzy, she did know where she lived in the summer of '81. That put it in a context of time. And of course, in the summer of '81, Clarence Thomas was not in the picture. This is a glimpse at the transparency of the Obama administration, because Obama rewarded these two culprits, these two miscreants, by nominating Biden as his vice president and appointing Janet Napolitano to Homeland Security, where she is now in charge of looking for right-wing rednecks. Janet Napolitano Janet Napolitano